In the kingdom of Ketu, where the sun kissed the earth at dusk and the air was always filled with the scent of jasmine, lived a widow named Ayana. She was once the joy of her village, a young woman full of laughter, her hands skilled in weaving the finest cloth, and her heart always ready to give. But those days had faded away with the death of her beloved husband, Obi. Obi had been a warrior, a man of great renown who had fought alongside his brothers to protect the kingdom from invaders. He was strong and fierce, but gentle in his love for Ayana. Together, they had dreamed of a long life filled with children and peaceful days under the shade of the mango tree in their yard. But life had a different plan. Obi had died a year ago, in a battle that no one had seen coming. His death was swift, the kind that left no time for goodbyes. He had been the village's protector, and without him, Ayana's heart felt as if it had been torn out and buried in the deepest part of the forest. Each day, she wandered through their home, unable to escape the shadows of his absence. The sound of his laughter, the feel of his touch, the way he had smiled when he looked at her, all of it was now a distant memory, like a forgotten song in the winds of time. Yet, in the quiet of the night, Ayana would hear something, a soft melody that seemed to echo through the walls of their home. She would sit by the window, staring out into the darkness, listening to the wind carry a distant tune. She often wondered if Obi's spirit was trying to speak to her through the song. It was a haunting, beautiful melody that she could never quite catch, and it filled her heart with both sorrow and longing. The villagers, too, mourned for Obi. They held a great feast in his honor, but Ayana could not bring herself to join. She preferred the company of silence, of memories that no one could understand. She was still in the early stages of grief, not yet ready to face the world without Obi by her side. But then, one day, the village elder, Ife, a woman whose age was as ancient as the land itself, came to Ayana's home. Ife was a woman of many secrets, and it was said that she had the ability to speak with the spirits of the dead. Her eyes were deep with wisdom, and her voice carried the weight of countless years. Ayana, Ife said softly, "The time has come for you to honor your husband with the song of the dead." Ayana's heart tightened at the words. The song of the dead was an ancient tradition of their people. It was said that when a warrior passed, his soul would remain in the village until it was called into the afterlife by the widow's song. The song was powerful, a bridge between the living and the dead. But Ayana had never believed in such things. She had never sung to the spirits, nor did she know if she ever could. "I cannot sing," Ayana whispered, her voice shaking. "Not yet. I know your heart is broken," Ife said, placing a hand on Ayana's shoulder. "But it is your love for Obi that will guide your voice. The dead do not need perfection, only the truth of your sorrow." Ayana looked into the elder's eyes, searching for some kind of reassurance, but found none. Instead, there was only the weight of destiny, a call she could not ignore. "I will try," Ayana said, her voice barely above a whisper. And so, as the moon rose high into the sky that night, Ayana stood by the edge of the village, where the earth met the stars, and began to sing. Her voice trembled at first, hesitant and uncertain. But as she sang, she felt something stir within her, an energy, an essence that was both unfamiliar and comforting. The song was not just for Obi, she realized, but for herself, for the woman she had once been, and for the woman she was becoming. As her voice echoed across the land, she could almost feel Obi's presence beside her, as if his spirit were listening, waiting. The wind seemed to carry her song into the distance, where the dead lingered, caught between the world of the living and the unknown. The moonlight bathed Ayana's face as she sang, and for the first time since Obi's death, she felt a sense of peace. Perhaps, just perhaps, the song would bring him back to her in some way, even if only for a moment. But in the distance, something else stirred, a presence she could not see, but one that she could feel. The song had just begun, and Ayana was not alone. The following morning, Ayana awoke with a lingering sensation of unfamiliarity, as if the night's song had left something behind within her that couldn't be explained. The peaceful stillness of the morning, the gentle hum of the breeze weaving through the trees, felt different, more alive, more urgent. She had sung to Obi, but something about the night told her that the ritual was far from over. She stood by the edge of her house, her hands resting lightly on the wooden doorframe, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The soft light of dawn stretched across the land, its golden rays brushing the earth in a tender caress. Yet, even with all the beauty surrounding her, Ayana could not shake the unease that had settled in her chest. There was more to this song than she had understood the night before. More than just a simple offering for her husband's soul. It was then that Ife, the elder, arrived at her doorstep. The old woman was not alone, she was accompanied by a young girl, no older than 16, whose expression was serious and focused. The girl carried a bundle of herbs wrapped in palm leaves, and she walked with the solemnity of one who had long been part of sacred rituals. "Good morning, Ayana," Ife greeted her warmly, her deep voice like the rustle of leaves. "Last night, you honored your husband with your song, but the song is not yet complete. It is only the beginning." Ayana stood silent, her throat tightening as she met Ife's eyes. There was an undeniable intensity in the elder's gaze, a weight of knowledge and purpose that Ayana could not escape. She knew what Ife was asking of her even before the words were spoken. "You must sing again, Ayana. You must call to the dead, to the warriors and the ancestors, and bring them peace. The song is your gift to them, as it is to your husband." Ayana's heart stuttered in her chest. The song she had sung the night before had been born from the depth of her grief, but now, she was being asked to sing for the entire village, perhaps for all the dead who lingered in the land. She had never imagined that a single song could hold so much power. "But I do not know how," Ayana whispered, her voice faltering. "I don't know the song. I don't know how to call them." Ife nodded, her eyes soft with understanding. "The song lives within you, Ayana. It has always lived within you. You need only listen." The young girl stepped forward, offering Ayana the bundle of herbs. "This will help you. They will open your heart to the spirits, to the ones who have crossed over. Use them before you sing. You must open the gateway between this world and the next." Ayana hesitated, unsure of the unfamiliar ritual. She had never been one to seek the guidance of spirits, much less speak to the dead. But she saw in Ife's eyes the quiet urgency, the knowledge that Ayana was the one chosen to complete this task. Her husband's soul, along with the spirits of the others, was waiting. "I will do it," Ayana said, her voice firm but soft, as if the very act of speaking the words strengthened her resolve. Ife smiled, her face crinkling into a quiet expression of approval. "Good. Then come with me, Ayana. We will go to the sacred grove. There, you will sing the second part of the song. You must sing for the warriors, for the fallen, for those who never made it home." The sacred grove was a place known only to the elders. It was a forest of towering trees with thick branches that intertwined high above, casting everything beneath them into shadow. The ground was soft with fallen leaves and thick with the scent of earth and moss. The villagers believed the grove was a gateway to the spirit world, a place where the living could reach the dead and vice versa. But Ayana had never ventured there herself. She followed Ife and the young girl through the dense foliage, feeling the air grow cooler and the shadows deeper the farther they walked. She was conscious of the weight of the herbs in her hands, though she could not yet fathom what they would bring her. When they arrived at the heart of the grove, the air seemed to shimmer. The trees here were ancient, gnarled and twisted, their trunks massive and etched with symbols that Ayana could not recognize. At the center of the grove stood a stone altar, a natural formation carved by time and weather, its surface smooth and worn. "Place the herbs on the altar, Ayana," Ife instructed. "And then, prepare your heart." Ayana did as she was told, kneeling before the stone and unwrapping the bundle. She scattered the herbs across the altar, their fragrant scent filling the air. The moment she did, a sudden stillness descended upon the grove, as though the very earth had fallen silent in anticipation. "I want you to breathe deeply," Ife said. "Let the spirits in. Let them speak to you, guide you. The song will come." Ayana closed her eyes and inhaled the scent of the herbs, feeling the coolness of the air enter her lungs, filling her body with a strange energy. She felt a tingle at the back of her neck, as if something unseen were watching her, listening. Her pulse quickened, and her mind swelled with memories of Obi, the warmth of his embrace, his laughter, his warrior's strength. She could almost hear his voice calling her from the distance. Then, like a whisper on the wind, the song began to take shape in her mind. The melody, soft at first, echoed through the very bones of the forest. It was a haunting tune, sweet and mournful, a rhythm that spoke of both love and loss, of battle and peace. As Ayana began to hum the notes, she felt a presence, something ancient, something eternal, wrap around her, as if the spirits were lifting her voice to the heavens. The sound swirled in the air, winding through the branches of the trees and across the open space of the grove. As she sang, she felt herself growing stronger. The song was no longer just for Obi, it was for all the warriors who had fallen in battle, for the villagers whose names had been forgotten, for the ancestors who had shaped the land she called home. With each note, Ayana's grief lessened, replaced by a sense of purpose and clarity. She was no longer just a widow mourning her husband, she was the voice of the village, the bridge between the living and the dead. She was the one who could guide the souls home. When the song ended, a profound silence fell over the grove. Ayana remained kneeling, her chest heaving with emotion, her eyes closed in reverence. The air was heavy with the weight of her song, and she could feel the presence of the spirits all around her, their whispers fading into the wind. Ife placed a hand on Ayana's shoulder, her voice gentle but filled with awe. "You have done it, Ayana. The song has been heard." Ayana looked up, her eyes wide with wonder. The grove, the spirits, everything felt alive in a way she had never imagined. She had not only sung for Obi, but for the entire history of her people. And in doing so, she had opened a door, one that could never be closed. The days that followed Ayana's song in the sacred grove were filled with a quiet unease. The villagers seemed to move about their daily lives as usual, but there was a subtle shift in the air, a sense of something greater stirring just beyond the horizon. Ayana, however, could not shake the feeling that her work was far from finished. The spirits had heard her song, but their presence lingered, almost tangible, in the air around her. She could feel them, watching, waiting. It was late one evening, when the sun had dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the village, that the feeling became overwhelming. Ayana stood outside her house, her gaze fixed on the distant hills. The winds had changed, carrying with them a chill that sent a shiver down her spine. She could hear the faintest echo of the song she had sung, the soft melody that now seemed to hum in the very fabric of the earth. As she stood there, the shadows deepened, and for the briefest moment, Ayana felt something brush against her. It was as though a hand had reached out from the ether, a presence that filled her with both fear and recognition. Then, she heard it, a voice. Soft at first, like a whisper carried on the wind, but growing clearer with each passing second. "Ayana," the voice said, "we are here." She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The voice was not Obi's, and it was something older, deeper. A chorus of voices, faint and distant, but unmistakably there. And then, the wind carried the song again. The same haunting melody she had sung in the grove, but now it was woven with new layers, voices joining hers, harmonizing with the very essence of the land. Ayana closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the sensation. The song was calling to her, guiding her, leading her to a place she had never known. Without thinking, she stepped away from her home and into the night, her feet moving of their own accord, drawn by the invisible pull of the spirits. She followed the path through the village, the echoes of the song growing louder, until she reached the edge of the forest. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their twisted branches reaching toward the sky. The air was thick with the scent of earth and decay, but beneath it, Ayana could smell something else, something familiar, yet unsettling. It was the scent of battle, of blood and iron. "Ayana, come to us," the voices called again, this time more insistent, more urgent. She hesitated only for a moment before stepping into the darkness of the forest, her breath steady, her heart beating in time with the rhythm of the song. She walked deeper into the woods, the shadows seeming to close in around her, the only sound the soft rustling of the leaves beneath her feet. She was not afraid. There was a sense of destiny here, a force greater than her fear, greater than the grief she had carried for so long. The song led her to a clearing, and there, in the center, stood a figure, a tall, imposing presence draped in the tattered remnants of battle armor. His eyes, bright and filled with a fierce light, met hers across the distance. His face was unfamiliar, but there was something about him that stirred a deep, primal recognition within her. He was a warrior, one of the lost. "You sing, and we hear," the warrior's voice echoed in the air. "But we are not at rest. The song you offer is not for us alone." Ayana felt the weight of his words settle into her bones. He was not alone. Behind him there were others, figures dressed in battle-worn clothing, their eyes filled with both sorrow and determination. These were the warriors of old, the ones who had fought and died, whose names had faded into myth and legend. "I have sung for Obi," Ayana said, her voice trembling with the enormity of the moment. "But I do not understand. What is it you want from me?" The warrior took a step forward, his presence overwhelming as he moved through the mist that seemed to rise from the ground. "We are the forgotten," he said. "Our souls linger, lost between the worlds, for we were never truly honored. The song you sing must reach beyond the veil of the living and call us home." Ayana felt her throat tighten. These warriors had fought, had died for the land she loved, and now they were trapped, caught between the realm of the living and the afterlife. The weight of their need pressed upon her chest, filling her with a deep sorrow. "But I cannot do this alone," she whispered, feeling the weight of responsibility crash down upon her. "I am only one voice." The warrior's eyes softened, and for a moment he seemed to look at her not as a widow, but as one of his own, one of the living who carried their hopes, their unfinished battles. "You are never alone," the warrior replied. "The song is in you. But you must call to us, to all the lost ones, if you wish to bring us peace." Suddenly, Ayana understood. The song she had sung had not been just for Obi, it had been a call for all the lost spirits who had fought for the kingdom, for all those whose deaths had been forgotten. She had been chosen, not simply to honor her husband, but to give voice to those who had no voice. She stepped forward, her heart heavy but resolute. "I will sing," she said, her voice stronger now, no longer trembling with doubt. "I will sing for all of you." And so, Ayana began to sing once more. At first, the song was soft, tentative, as if testing the spirit's presence. But as the notes left her lips, they began to take shape, weaving together in a tapestry of memory and longing. The melody grew louder, stronger, each note carrying the weight of 1,000 souls, each one yearning to be heard, to be remembered. As Ayana sang, the warriors around her began to stir. Their eyes softened, their faces filled with a peace that had eluded them for centuries. Slowly, one by one, the lost warriors stepped forward, their forms becoming clearer, more defined as the song wrapped around them, lifting them toward the sky. Their bodies began to dissolve into the mist, their spirits rising like smoke, finally freed from the bonds of the earthly realm. But Ayana's song did not end. She sang for every soul who had died before their time, for every warrior who had fallen in battle, for every forgotten name that had slipped from memory. With each passing moment, she felt the weight of the past being lifted, as though the land itself was breathing in time with her voice. As the last of the spirits ascended, Ayana felt a profound stillness settle over the forest. The air was lighter, the shadows less oppressive. And in the silence that followed, she heard Obi's voice, soft, loving, filled with gratitude. "You have freed them, Ayana," Obi whispered. "And in doing so, you have freed yourself." Ayana smiled, her heart full. She had done it. The song had been heard. The warriors had found peace, and so had she. The days that followed Ayana's song were both serene and unsettling. The village seemed to breathe with a new kind of peace, yet there was an undercurrent of change, a subtle shift in the very essence of the land. Ayana could feel it in her bones. The spirits had been freed, their voices lifted into the sky, but something else lingered, something that had been touched by the ritual she had performed, a connection that would forever bind her to the world of the dead. As she walked through the village, Ayana noticed that the people had changed. The air was lighter, more vibrant. Children laughed with abandon, the elders spoke in soft tones, and the earth seemed to yield more fruit, more sustenance. It was as if the land itself had been touched by the peace she had brought, and now it was offering its abundance in return. Yet, despite the outward harmony, Ayana could not shake the feeling that her journey was far from over. The spirits were gone, their voices now only whispers on the wind, but the land still carried their presence. She had brought peace to the dead, but what of the living? What of her own heart, still heavy with grief? One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Ayana sat at the edge of the village, watching the sky turn shades of orange and purple. The wind had stilled, and for a moment, everything felt perfectly quiet. But as she sat there, she felt a pull, a familiar sensation, as if something was calling her once again. She stood and followed the feeling, moving through the village and into the fields. Her steps took her to the edge of the forest, the place where she had first heard the spirits speak. But this time, the forest seemed different, darker, as if it were holding its breath. The trees loomed higher, their twisted branches creating a canopy that blocked out the fading light of the day. As she walked deeper into the woods, Ayana felt the air grow heavier, the scent of earth and decay mixing with something more pungent, more alive. The forest had always been a place of mystery, a place where the line between the living and the dead was thin. But now, she could feel the presence of the spirits once again, though this time, they were not the warriors she had freed. No, these were different. The path narrowed, and Ayana found herself standing before a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a large stone, its surface etched with strange symbols she had never seen before. The air around it shimmered, and as she approached, a voice spoke from the shadows. "Ayana," the voice said, not in the wind, but from the very earth itself. "You have done well. But the work is not finished." Ayana's breath caught in her throat. She knew that voice, it was the same one she had heard before, that of the warrior who had led her in the sacred grove. But now, the voice was different. It was older, a more ancient, and filled with an undeniable power. "What do you mean?" Ayana asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "I have sung for the lost warriors. They are free." The stone before her seemed to pulse with energy, the symbols glowing faintly in the dim light. The voice answered, "Yes, the warriors are at rest, but there are others who are not yet ready to move on. They linger in the spaces between, caught between life and death, neither here nor there. You must help them, Ayana. You are the bridge." The song must continue. A chill ran through her, and she felt a knot form in her stomach. This was not the work she had imagined. Freeing the warriors had been an act of love and sacrifice, but this felt different. These spirits were not at peace. They were lost, wandering, waiting for something that Ayana could not yet understand. "What do you want me to do?" Ayana asked, her voice barely a whisper. The voice was soft, but it carried a weight that settled deep in her chest. "You must sing once more. But this time, the song will not be for the warriors. It will be for those who are not yet ready to let go. You will help them find their way, help them move on. You are the one who can guide them." Ayana stood in the clearing, her heart heavy with the weight of the task before her. She had never considered the possibility that there were spirits who had not yet found peace, spirits who had been left behind, trapped between the worlds. And yet, here she was, being called upon to help them. It was not a choice she could refuse. "I will sing," she said, her voice steady now, filled with a resolve she had not known she possessed. The stone before her began to glow brighter, the symbols shifting as if they were alive. The air hummed with the promise of something ancient, something profound. As Ayana closed her eyes and began to hum the opening notes of the song, she felt the ground beneath her feet shift, as though the earth itself was responding to her call. The song was different this time. It was not a song of mourning or remembrance, it was a song of release, a song of letting go. As the melody flowed from her lips, Ayana felt the air grow heavy with the presence of the lost souls. They were not warriors this time, they were people from her village, men and women who had died too soon, whose names had been forgotten by time, whose lives had been interrupted by violence, illness, and sorrow. The spirits gathered around her, their faces pale and faded, their eyes filled with a deep sadness. Ayana's heart ached for them, for their suffering, for their inability to move on. She sang for them, pouring her soul into the song, letting it flow through her as if it were an offering, a gift of peace. The spirits began to stir, their forms becoming clearer, more defined. As they listened to her song, they began to move, slowly, as if they were waking from a long slumber. Some reached out toward her, their hands trembling with the weight of their unfulfilled desires, their eyes searching for the peace they had longed for. And Ayana, with each note of her song, reached back. She reached for them, offering them the peace they had been denied, guiding them toward the light. The clearing seemed to come alive, the very trees swaying with the rhythm of the song. And as Ayana sang, the lost souls began to dissolve, their bodies fading into the air, leaving behind only the faintest traces of their presence. One by one, they ascended, their sorrow lifted, their burdens released. When the last soul had gone, Ayana felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. The air around her was still, and the forest was quiet once again. The spirits had found their peace, and so had she. But as Ayana stood in the clearing, her heart full, she knew this was not the end. The song had brought peace to the lost, but there was still one more task she had to face. She had helped the dead, but now, she had to find peace within herself.